Welcome to Sports Week, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Al Galloway, and we're here tonight as we are each and every week during all things COVID here, bringing you up to date on what's going on in the world of sport in Halton region. And joined tonight by Dan Del Monte, who hockey fans, particularly of the junior variety in the Halton area, will certainly know Dan from his days with the Oakville Blades and now as coach and GM of the Milton Menace. And Dan, welcome to the show. And hopefully, first of all, right off the bat, how are you and the family faring during all these COVID days?
Good to be with you, Al. Firstly, thanks for having me on. Everybody's well here. Yeah, no problems whatsoever. We're healthy. Hopefully, same with your family.
Well, so far so good. Knock on wood. It's one of those deals where I've been getting by pretty well for a guy my age, and I hopefully will continue to do so for quite some time to come. And I touched on it just a moment ago. There are fans such as myself who remember your playing days. You played between 91 and 93 with the Oakville Blades. And tell us a little bit about that, about who was coaching and maybe some of the guys on the teams. Let's take a little walk down memory lane here.
Oh, boy.
Now Millock will try it. Millock over to Del Monte. Del Monte waits, back to Millock. Millock is stepped into by Gordon. Hill to Del Monte. Del Monte can't get to it. Glazer off back to Higgs. Higgs over to Honchar. Honchar shives wide. And Del Monte shoots, he scores! Dan Del Monte picking up that rebound. Glenn Erskine just not getting back in time.
You're asking me to go back about 20 teams ago. I have a hard enough time remembering last season. So 91, first year, Skip Minor Midget played in the OJ. And back then it wasn't called the OJ. What would have been called back then, Al?
I believe it was the Ontario Provincial Hockey League, the OPHL.
Okay, maybe. I'll take your word for it. We had really good teams. My coach was Ken Moody, who was a really colorful guy. And he was a great coach. I really enjoyed having him, and a gentleman named Eric Smith. I was there for 2 years, and sure, hockey was a lot different then. It was a much more physical game, and for a smaller guy like myself, it was a little bit dangerous out there. You felt like sometimes playing hockey, but our team did well. I think, if I'm not mistaken, I won Rookie of the Year in the league, and was got a scholarship to Bowling Green. That's a whole other story, though, how I ended up in the OHL.
That's okay. And of course, it was much different playing junior hockey in Oakville in those days. You were in that old barn down on Rebecca down there.
Yeah.
It certainly was a much smaller space to find yourself in than they do today in Oakville with the Olympic-sized ice. Any particular memories of playing in that little bandbox on Rebecca?
Actually, our commissioner sent me a game of my team, Oakville, playing his team in Burlington back from 91. It was just amazing memories to think of that old barn. I loved that barn. I was sad when I had heard that they had kind of completely refurbished it now. But yeah, it's hard to beat Oakville's barn these days. It's they built good fast skating teams in that rink, and but it was a great barn to play in, a great junior atmosphere.
And there's always great debate around the Ontario Junior Hockey League these days about the fact that Oakville's got the Olympic-sized ice, the only team in the league, I believe, to have that feature. What's it like preparing teams who are used to the 200 by 85-foot sheet of ice, and all of a sudden they've got to adapt to that bigger Olympic-sized sheet?
Yeah, there is no doubt. That is, I can't stress enough how different the game feels there. From the littlest things to a goaltender's angles, to how much space you can allow a team to come up in the neutral zone with. It was monumentally different. It really changed from the way we played our first game in Oakville to our third game in Oakville.
Absolutely. I bet it did. And you also got a taste of major junior for a couple of years. You had a couple of years with the Peterborough Petes and the Sarnia Sting up until 1995. And what does knowing what life was like in major junior, what does that do to what you can bring back to these kids at the so-called Tier 2 level?
Oh boy. You're talking about, 2 years in the OHL and 15 years of pro hockey. I'd like to think there's a lot that I can offer these kids, and more than just X's and O's and the structure of the game, and how you kind of prepare though, and the mental side of the game. And I think that, not to be too full of it here, but I think with the kind of young team we had last year, and moving some of the older guys that we moved at our deadline, we had to be one of the youngest, if not the youngest team for the second half of the year, and we were very competitive with a very young team, and that's it's a challenging thing to do when your team knows that you're out of the playoffs and by the end of September, to be able to continually get better throughout the course of the year. I was quite proud of that.
Great. And last but not least, before we leave your playing days, number of years playing in Europe, most specifically in Germany, I believe.
Yeah.
How does that play a role when you're looking to maybe recruit kids and sign them and coach them and manage them? What do you bring back from the game over there, which obviously is a little different than our game with the bigger ice surface, if nothing else?
I think that you can actually see it in the kind of team and kind of players that we put together last year. I wasn't a big guy, still not, and we have a few kind of water bug type of players on our team that are excellent two-way players. That typical old school Canadian style of hockey that we played back in our day, I'm not even sure that is today's Canadian hockey. It's all kind of morphed to more of a European style brand of hockey, a puck possession, talent and speed versus brute force. So it's always kind of been my sort of key to my game, and I look for that intelligent and skill level in players that I'm selecting for my team.
And maybe not so much the old dump and chase game that Canada was so used to for years and years, and maybe a little, as you
For
say,
sure.
on speed and cycling the puck.
For sure. I like to tell my players, I'd rather see you do too much with the puck and use your abilities and use your skills and try to set up some of the plays that we're working on, rather than play an oversimplified game where you're constantly trying to get the puck back from the other team. So, hopefully now with our team being a little bit older and the league getting a year younger, hopefully we'll have the puck even more next year.
And Milton was their first year back in the league, and certainly new to Jason Trifon's organization and the Menace. And Milton did such a great job with promoting themselves in the community, right from how the arena was refurbished, right through to the sales and marketing of all the swag out there with the hoodies and the hats and everything. Milton Menace was all over town. And how does that come into when you're trying to attract players? Is that something that really attracts a player to the market? Because you guys have one of the best attendances in the league, and it's certainly not the biggest arena.
Well, thank you for noticing. It was a tremendous amount of work that Jason and our staff have put in to try to create that atmosphere. We wanted to make that. How do you kind of change the image of what Milton and junior hockey has been over the last sort of decade or so? And we wanted to rebrand ourselves and try to kind of put the kids first and the players first, so that hopefully, because these players all talk to one another, and obviously put together, a nice logo, great uniforms, and try to have that cachet as a place where kids want to play. And so far in the conversations that I've had with kids this year, it seems to have worked.
Great. And was year one pretty much as expected then? I mean, you talked about how it kind of evolved throughout the season, that you continually got better. Was that pretty much the expectation, that you would maybe start slow and build momentum as the year went on?
Geez, how much time do we have? I don't know that anything in year one of a new business goes quite as planned. I don't think that we plan to sort of have to get rid of our coach, and I don't think that we plan to turn over half of our roster. Things evolve the way they evolved, and you got to roll with the punches and make the best of it. But I think that by the end of the year, we realized that we weren't going to be in a position where we were going to try to make a run for it. And we wanted to set ourselves up for this year to have as many returning players as we could have. And, it's really worked out that way, where I think we're only losing Marcus Didiano as and Boyo as our goalie, as his 20-year-olds that are leaving. But we're very rich with assets right now and returning players, and I think that that bodes well going into our second year.
And you talked about making that move from the exclusive role of general manager to the dual role of GM and coach, which you are carrying, it looks like, into year two. Is that something we can expect to continue from Dan Del Monte moving forward? And if so, how does it change the way you approach your roles with the team?
It was a juggling act for sure. When you're trying to take on both of those roles, it's a lot to do. And there are some roles where times where those lines get crossed between GM and coach, but it's why it's important to surround yourself with great people, and with Jason and with Paige and the different assistant coaches that we had last year with Dreeks and Jeff. I mean, it was a really nice group to work with, and everybody kind of, carried their weight and then some.
Yeah, and let's talk a little bit about the team. You've touched on a couple of players that are coming back from last year. Talk about some of the returnees and what you're expecting to see and how they grow. Maybe a guy like Jordan Stock might be a great place to start.
Well, listen, Jordan, we're thrilled to have Jordan come back. Our captain, kind of the soul of our team. And again, him going into, his 19-year-old year, we feel like Jordan could be one of the better players in the league. We feel like we've got some players like, Rogers and Tucci that, didn't have a big role in our team until the deadline. But if you look at their last 20 games, they were point-a-game players. Randawa should have a great year. We got a new piece in Horsley back in a trade for the summer. Very excited to have Keelan Froats come to us from Brampton. So we're very heavy in the 01 age group, and we feel like, we've got 3 lines at least full of like returning solid players.
Yeah, Keelan Froats, maybe a guy that can put the biscuit in the basket for you?
For sure. And that's one of the assets I love about his game. And the other thing is I love the kind of vigor that he brings to the game too. We felt like we needed his right hand shot, because we didn't even have one of them at forward last year. So and just the style of game he plays is really something that appeals to me. He's a tough kid, and he can play the game.
Patrick Glazer, another youngster moving in, comes from the Burlington Cougars, played a pretty significant role with the Cougars last year in the games that I saw them play. What are you expecting from Patrick?
Yeah, I mean, we think that was a good hockey deal. They've got, they got a very good forward, and we got a D that we thought that we really needed. We got, when speaking about our defense core with Freddie Ilias and Amaral returning, our 2 young 03s and Forrester and Niagara going into their second year, we expect, a big jump from them. They played huge minutes for us, and almost no 16-year-olds in the league do that. But we really hope that that'll pay off for us. You had a kid like Patrick Glazer, who's going into his third year of junior hockey in 01. A player that was on the NHL draft list at the beginning of last year. We've got huge expectations for him, and we feel like that rounds out a really solid decor.
Are there any other pieces to the puzzle you're looking to maybe go searching for before training camp begins, whenever that might be, whether it's
right
in September as normal, or whether it's something that gets pushed out a little deeper into the year?
Well, that's a great question. We just had a staff meeting about that. There's no doubt that there's enough players out there that would love to play for the Menace, that we could fill our roster, but we also want to be cognizant of what's going on in the United States, and that there's lots of Canadian kids that maybe say, you know what, I don't know how comfortable I feel going down there this year. Maybe it's something. So we don't want to fill the roster to the brim. We want to kind of let things play out here and see what comes available before training camp.
Yeah, I didn't want to dive too much into the whole COVID thing, but it obviously impacts the way you look at the whole recruiting question. I've even talked to a couple of guys about the fact that they're looking a little more at the local ranks now than maybe they would have in the past, because the whole issue about a parent wanting their son to be billeted with strangers or vice versa. Somebody might normally be willing to offer a billet to a player might not be so anxious to have somebody that's not a member of the family in the house. So how does that impact the way you look at players now?
Just as you said, all of those things are factors. Billets, and we've got some great billet families that have expressed to us that they'd be happy to welcome new players to Milton. But there's definitely, with the different leagues in the States, you can be sure that there are players that at least we're thinking of maybe transferring or trying to seek a trade elsewhere that may be reconsidering that. And so we have, a few spots available, a few key spots available. And we're going to wait and see how things play out here. But we're hopeful from the conversations that I've had over the summer here. We're hopeful that there will be a few kids kind of repatriated back to our league.
Yeah, I know you've talked about the fact that you made distinct moves to get younger last year, but maybe there's a couple of overagers available out there that might not normally have been available, that might have been going NCAA or whatever this year.
It's a great point. Or kids that might have been in the USHL this year that say, you know what, I'm not feeling like that's a situation I want to get into this year. So, right, all of those things are on the table, and we're hopeful here. I mean, I've been in this business long enough that, I know a lot of the kids in the loop, and I think that we'll have some kids come back to our league that might have been playing elsewhere.
Well, Dan Del Monte, we certainly don't know, as you and I sit here tonight in mid-July as we record this, we don't have a crystal ball to know exactly when camp and or a season might get underway, or if there are other obstacles that might come into play. But we wish you and everybody with the Menace, and of course specifically with the Del Monte family as well, all the best in these strange times we find ourselves living in, and we look forward to seeing you around the rink.
It's great to talk to you again. I can't wait to see you at the rink as well, and stay safe.
And maybe we can talk a little bit more about the days of the Wild West in the OPG.
Absolutely.
Dan Del Monte of the Milton Menace, and we'll take a moment now to switch things up, and we'll bring in Alan Corkum to talk about some more things to do with the Ontario Junior Hockey League.